All right, so we're looking at chapter 10 here of the weight loss manual. This is going to be our final chapter for the weight loss class itself. When final chapter, at least we have another lecture tomorrow. It'll just be no PowerPoint. But we're looking at the how to apply our first couple sessions here. So we want you guys to be able to, I remember the sentence in particular, and I find it impossible for me to understand, but we want to be able to sequence requirements for the first client session, including assessments, goal setting, expectations, and recommendations. And I was like, sequence requirements, what a weird sentence. And then sequence requirements for the second client session. Basically, we want to lay out like what your first session should look like and what your second session should look like, and how we can create sort of a long-term plan for our weight loss goals. We want to sort of flow out these first couple sessions, right? So things that you want to do when you're working with someone, obviously we want to make sure that we are in contact with our client and we're communicating as clearly as possible. I mean, human beings, we are just so gosh darn bad at communication, and I don't care who you are. Everybody's bad, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were like, well, I happen to think that I'm really good at communication. I was like, well, I think that I'm good at communication as well, but I also think that there's not a person on the planet who is actually good at communication. I don't think it has happened yet, because there's just a lot that can kind of get lost in translation sometimes between one person and another. So our job is sort of to convey all of the knowledge and information that we have to our client in a way that is going to be easy for them to understand, but also we are also trying to lay things out in such a way that is going to be easy for them to apply, because, sometimes it comes down to, everybody can understand how, the processes of weight loss, and they understand the process of like how to do all this, but nobody actually wants to do it. They're trying to figure out how to apply it to themselves. That's the tricky bit sometimes. So clients may require different considerations depending on who they are, depending on how fit they are, or where you're starting them in a cycle, what type of training you are applying to them. So first impressions are always going to be really huge. You got to remember, this is a new relationship with a new client. So because of that, you are definitely trying to start things off on the right foot by building as much rapport as possible, getting your clients getting your clients as invested quickly as you can. And so when you're doing that, you want to make sure that you are, communicating very clearly in the beginning. Confirm your date and your time of your appointment. Tell them what to wear for their session. I cannot tell you how many times I've had clients show up in sandals to the gym, which is just an insane thing to do. Or they'll show up in sneakers or slightly dressy shoes, things that sneakers can be fine as long as they're somewhat athletic. But it is important to ensure that they're wearing, I've had clients show up in jeans before, you want to make sure they wear the appropriate attire. I personally always encourage my clients to dress it. And this is one thing being a morning trainer. It'll be very cold in the morning. So I always encourage my clients to dress in layers. That's a message that I always send out in a welcome email. You guys have seen my emails of in-person meetups before. I often encourage people to, bring water as well. But I also always tell them exactly what time our appointment is. And I always tell them where to meet me in the gym. So similar to the way that we meet up in person, I always send out a text message saying hey, we're going to group up in the lobby before we head upstairs, right? That is a habit that I've had, for all of my career, because it's easy to get lost in the gym. It's easy to kind of end up in different places and stuff. And so we want to encourage our client to find an easy way finding us. And lucky for us, we're behind the front desk, or we're behind the trainer desk, probably more likely. And the most gyms that you end up working, I say most gyms, most commercial gyms that you work at will take pictures of people. So we'll have an advantage. We'll sort of know what our client looks like and stuff before they actually sort of show up for their session. But then First session, how do we always run our first sessions? Well, we do our fitness assessment, right? We're going to take ourselves through gathering all that objective information, all that subjective information, so that we can learn a little bit about our client, make sure that they are being kept safe through the subjective PARQ and things like that, sign their waivers, blah, blah, blah. And then we want to make sure that we know what their goals are, what's important to them, what they want to achieve, what the timeline for achieving it actually is, right? So this is where going through your fitness assessments like really valuable. We can sit down at the desk, we can learn a little bit about like their food intake and diet, right? We can do like a 24-hour dietary recall or a food frequency questionnaire. So while we're doing fitness assessments, there are some special considerations that you want to make when it comes to working with, and this particular chapter is kind of focused primarily on this, but when you are talking about working with, like, let's say extremely obese individuals, right? So there are some modifications that you make, like the assessments that we always teach you guys. We go through the overhead squat, we go through the pushing and the pulling assessment, right? We've got some other ones like the push-up assessment. Those things might not necessarily be applicable to somebody who is extremely overweight, or like a senior, for instance, right? That might not always apply super well. Because maybe like the knees aren't working properly, or are inflamed, and I have a really hard time dealing with like specific ranges of motion. So if that's the case, you want to be careful with stuff like that. You want to make sure that you take those considerations into account. Make sure that your client is as comfortable as possible. So always make sure that obviously your equipment is in working order. If you're going to be doing like circumference measurements, I will say, actually, and this is something you guys might run into. I wish that we would sort of change it up a little bit, but the tape measures that we give you guys in your bags, they're really good. I probably wouldn't use those on an extremely obese individual. You do not want to run into a scenario where your tape measure is not large enough to actually get someone's measurements. And the ones that we give you are good, but they are somewhat short. So they would work on somebody who's maybe 300 pounds, but like anything above that, I'd be kind of cautious about. You may need to get, if that's, if you are dedicated to working in weight loss, if you think that's where you're going to find yourself in your career, I would probably invest in a larger tape measure. So adequate circumference measurement tools, making sure that your scale goes up to their body weight. When I worked at, when I worked at Biggest Loser, for instance, we had two scales. We had one that was like our in-body machine, but the in-body was only good up to 400 pounds. So if we had anybody who was like heavier than that, and it was like a judgment call that the trainer had to make, we would take them down the hallway. And I always made sure that they didn't even know that the other scale existed. They were positive that that was the default version, right? So we'd take them down and we'd use like this, with a slightly more industrial sized scale. And then I would use a handheld body fat tester. A little bit less accurate, but that's all right, because, obviously the priority here, we know their body fat percentage is going to be sort of out of whack, so really the priority is just, we can just track weight, circumference measurements, things like that. And then obviously we're tracking some body fat percentage. So make sure that all your tools are in working order before you take your client through these sessions. I do not, like, for instance, I also don't recommend using skin fold calipers with extremely obese individuals. Pretty much anybody, I think that skin fold calipers stop working with pretty much anybody over 250 to 300 pounds. When you start to get above those ranges, you're probably going to want to prioritize using a bioelectric impedance scale instead. So some version of like a body fat, scanner, rather than the skin fold calipers. And we do that for two reasons. Number one, if somebody is that overweight, they probably have a certain level of self-consciousness associated with that. So having them like in the middle of the gym floor and doing like body fat pinching, where they're lifting their shirt up and doing, or circumference measurements even, can make them feel a little bit put on display, which is definitely not what we're going for. I mean, you should always be doing all of this in a private area anyways. A lot of gyms, I hate the way gyms are laid out for like the sales area. A lot of times, like, it's just right there in the open. They'll have like just a bunch of like desks with no walls, no nothing, which gives a nice open feel, but like is not very good for making people feel like they are getting a private experience. So just be careful with that. Make sure that you're going to a private area and make sure you're doing everything in your power to make sure they are as comfortable as possible. And like I said, probably focusing primarily on bioelectric impedance is going to be key here. When you look at your postural assessments, the overhead squat, let's say we take our client, onto the gym floor, it may be necessary to modify your overhead squat. Those of you who have been through our senior module where we've talked about like, modifications we have to make for senior clients, if they have like arthritis or if they have osteoporosis, aches and pains, it may be necessary to modify the overhead squat to a sit and stand assessment. A sitting and standing assessment is still a really good way. You can still see their posture, buckle and move in certain ways. It's not quite as accurate, not quite as good for testing core strength, for instance. But in general, the overhead squat is something that you can modify and still learn a lot, even from just sitting and rising from a chair. And then we probably are going to prioritize food intake evaluations. I do think that goes in a weird order, by the way. I wouldn't start your client on like an overhead squat and then do the diet stuff. You would do the diet stuff before heading to the gym floor. But food intake questionnaires like a 24-hour dietary recall, or if they happen to have a food log and you want to take a look at it, it's a really good time for it. You can always ask them and be like, hey, do you track your calories? Do you track your food currently? And if they say yes, and it's like, they do it on an app or something, like you can take a look at that, which is great. Like I love it when clients have like a food log that they've already been using and stuff. Or we do food frequency questionnaires. We know that, for instance, NASM has some food frequency questions sort of peppered into their standard medical history questionnaire. How often do you get high intake of sugar, fat, salt, things like that. And then we can discuss any diet tips there in the beginning. There's a really good chance for you to sort of shift from assessment mode to instructor mode, where you can sort of lay out some good diet tips and start building that value of like your services right in the beginning of your session. And you'll find that that's going to happen so naturally. I mean, how many times have you guys been in conversation with someone and someone will say something about like diet and you'll go, oh yeah, no, that's actually, it's a lot easier to stick to that kind of thing when you do, X, Y, and Z. So that is something that you can also do like right out the gate, which is really, really, really nice. So next thing you want to do, you want to make sure that you are learning a little bit about like their goals, right? So what their target behaviors are, and get into the sort of exercise psychology side of things, right? So it's really important for you to get a clear idea of what their goals are. And we also know that we want our goals to be smart. And I don't mean, when I say smart, I don't mean we don't want our goals to be intelligent. I mean, we literally want to check them. The SMART acronym is a really good acronym for you to basically run through and see, is this goal going to be effective? Doesn't matter if it's a long-term goal, doesn't matter if it's a short-term goal. We're just trying to track whether or not we think this goal is going to be effective. So it's really important to make sure that you are, like, that's what the SMART acronym is. It's kind of a litmus test to test whether or not a goal is good. Somebody said they want to lose weight. It's not a very good goal because it's not specific, it's not measurable. I mean, I guess weight is measurable. And it is attainable. You know what actions you have to take in order to like lose weight. But it's realistic in a sense, but I don't know how much weight you're going to try to lose. Because you didn't give me like an actual number to ensure that like, we're heading in a specific direction, and we have no deadline, which means it's that type of thing that you can put off forever. How many, think about this right now, guys. How many things in your life do you have that like, you're like, I have these goals and these things that I want to do, but you haven't given yourself a deadline for them? How long have you been working on that goal? And when was the last time you actually did anything to sort of work towards it? I was having a moment of reflection about that last night. I was like, man, I need to get back on the wagon with this thing that I'm working on right now. Because I just took a whole week off, and I had yesterday. I mean, I was back yesterday, get back in the swing of things. Why didn't I work on my thing, And I was like, oh, yeah. So today I've got to sort of play a little bit of catch up and see if I can get 2 days worth of work in. So helping our clients sort of restructure some of their goals, that's something that you can do right off the beginning of your session. That's going to help them go, wow, this person's really professional. They really know how to lay things out. And, they just translated this intangible thing that I had in mind into something that's very tangible that I can very much see myself achieving, right? So if they say they want to lose weight, we ask them questions and say, well, what do you mean by that, right? And then they say something like, well, it's like, oh, I'm hoping to get like, I want to look like, and then they give you an example. And it's like, okay, so what you really want to focus on is like, toning, right? Like, yeah, I want to see my abs, right? And it's like, okay, well, if you want to see your abs, we need to get down to a body fat percentage somewhere between about 10% for most like men, a little bit higher than that for most women, unfortunately. Women have a little bit of a harder time seeing their abs. But so we need to like, get our body fat percentage down a little bit in order to do that. So really what you're focusing on is maintaining as much muscle mass as possible while simultaneously losing as much fat as possible. So why don't we say, instead of losing weight, how much, let's take a look at your current statistics. We look at their body fat percentage, we start to analyze it. We say, currently you've got about 40 pounds worth of like body fat. We need to get that number down to, and then we, do the math. This is gonna be different for everybody. But let's say we need to get it down to 20 pounds of body fat, right? So we say, okay, we need to get this down to about 20. So really what we're going to focus on is instead of saying I want to lose weight, say something like I want to lose 10 pounds of body fat. And then we can give them a specific like timeline in order to do that within the next, we'll say, 10 to 15 weeks, right? So that's what we're going to focus on. And we do want to also make sure that we're avoiding any unrealistic goals, right? We want to make sure that, our client is focusing on nothing more than about 1/2 to 2 pounds per week. 2 pounds for like extremely obese individuals, that would be an okay rate. But for most people that we run into, most general weight loss, anybody with a BMI from around 30 or below, we're going to focus on, a maximum of about 1 pound of weight lost per week. So that's a 500 calorie deficit per day. So that's where the SMART goals system kind of comes in. That's why we went over SMART goals the other day. Again, we want to make sure they are specific, they are measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound, or time oriented, or timely is how I like to say it. And if we can do that right out the gate, before we even head down to the gym floor, this person's already going to have a really high level of trust in you, because you just translated this, very hard to understand concept into something that now seems not only more like realistic and possible for them, but also something that you've done many times in the past. You've shown your expertise, right? And that's very, very valuable. So we're going to start off with all that before we even get to the gym floor. Now, if you do decide to do just a very quick like posture analysis right there at the beginning, you can actually, when you get very, very good at this stuff, start to build workouts before you even head onto the gym floor. And so that's actually how I like to personally run my fitness assessments. I often like to, just bring like a step near the desk, and I'll do like 3-minute step test there. And I like to just do some body weight squats and things like that. All of this stuff can really be performed pretty close to the sales area. And that way, like, I can just go straight back to the desk, sit down and be like, all right, so now that I've got a lot of data about how your body operates, here's what we want to do in order to get you to those goals that we laid out earlier, right? So, I'll just pull up a piece of scratch paper or something and be like, so you told me that you want to lose 10 pounds of body fat within the next 10 to we'll say 12 to 15 weeks, right? So that's our SMART goal there, right? And so I'm going to go ahead and say, like, let's take a look at another like sort of short-term goal here. How often do you want to exercise? And then this person tells me, well, it's like, I can really only commit to maybe 3 days of the gym per week. And it's like, okay, great. So our other so that's one of our goals, right? Our other goal would be, to exercise 3 times per week for the next 12 weeks, right? So a short-term goal that we can have, right, when I hear that, is we can lay that out and say, I want to get, 36 sessions in the next 12 weeks. And I'd probably actually give that a deadline. In fact, let's just do it right now. We'll say, it's August 2nd here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So by October 25th. Good Lord. So there we go. Now I've got 3 goals laid out, right? 2 short-term goals here, right? And 1 sort of long-term major goal. And so these short-term goals that I laid out are going to feed into my long-term goal. And that's going to be very helpful. So now that I've laid all of that out, and then I take a look at their overhead squat, right? And so then I look at overhead squat compensations, right? We're going to see that they have arms fall forward, and we'll say excessive forward lean, right? So now, those of you who are brand new to this program, we haven't gone over this a ton, so you probably don't quite have this this memorized yet. But what does this mean? If we see during our overhead squat, we saw arms fall forward and an excessive forward lean. Well, what that's going to translate to is going to be overactive lat muscles. We're going to see overactive lats, probably pecs as well. We are going to see overactive calf muscles. Say calves. And by the way, this list is right here: overhead squat assessments or overhead squat compensations. We'll go with the CES. Actually, no, we won't, because that's not my job. I'll make sure we keep this the way we're supposed to. So there's our arms fall forward, right? So lats and pecs there. We also do see teres major, but that's something we're going to work on naturally. When we see like the excessive forward lean, we see the calves, and then sometimes it can be the hip flexors or the abdominals. But in this case, we're going to say that we elevated the heels, and suddenly their squat looked better. Boom, we know it's the calves. So those are our primary overactive muscles. Those are muscles that every time I build them a workout, I'm going to focus on stretching those out. Then we got the underactive. We just go straight to the other side of the joint, right? If it's the pecs that are tight, we flip to the other side of the joint. That's going to be rhomboids, middle/lower trapezius muscles. Those are all of the muscles, not your upper traps, not up here, but the lower ones that help with scapular retraction. We're going to say rotator cuff is weak, so we want to focus on some external rotation movements. And we know that because the calves are tight, we're going to focus on the anterior tibialis, right? And you guys will notice, checking my work here just to make sure that I'm not lying to you. We're going to see our underactive muscles, mid/lower trapezius, rhomboids, rotator cuff, anterior tibialis. And then you do see gluteus maximus and erector spinae, but those are opposite of this section. We're focused on this one right here. So there we go. Now I've got a list of muscles, and I keep that list right up here. So I'm just going to lay that out for my client right out the gate. That way, and I will actually pull this list up. Actually, as much as I keep that list up here, I love to have an overhead squat sheet with me. And I'll be like, so here's what I noticed. You do this, and it means this. You do this, and so it means this. I love to lay that out for my clients directly in front of them, because then they go, wow, this guy, obviously, this stuff is written down. I trust what this guy is saying. Like those are definitely the muscles I want to work on. So there's our overhead squat, right? That's what we sort of learned from that posture assessment. So now, right out the gate, if my client tells me they're going to exercise 3 times per week, I'm just going to go ahead and build them a workout right here. So we might go like, here's our Monday, Wednesday, Friday workout, right? So for Mondays, we're going to focus on like stretching out the lats, pecs, and calves. So I'm going to show them a couple exercises for that. So it's going to be total body. And because they are focused on fat loss, I'm going to do circuit training, right? And that's actually really easy. I mean, this is about as simple as like a training split can get. You've got total body workout A, you've got total body workout B, and you've got total body workout C. In fact, although to be fair, I probably wouldn't actually do that. I'd probably go A, and then this would probably be B, and then I'd probably go back to A. And then that way I can flip it the next week, right? So it'll go A, B, A, B, A, B. Run out of room again. So we'll do a schedule that kind of looks like this, right? They're going to switch between A and B on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And they'll alternate between 2 training splits. That way, the workout routine's not too complicated for them to have to memorize. They're not learning too many, brand new movements every time. So I'll lay that out and then put that down here. And then I'm going to build a really simple workout right now that we're going to head up to the gym floor and practice. It'll sort of be like a half version of workout A. And I can lay that out in 30 seconds. What exercise focuses on stretching the lats? We're going to warm up with a ball lat stretch. What stretches the pecs? We're going to warm up with a pectoral wall stretch. What stretches out the calves? We're going to do a wall calf stretch. Done and done. Right? Then for the underactive stuff, we need to work on the rhomboids in the middle trapezius. So I'm going to do some type of rowing motion. I need to strengthen the rotator cuff. So I'm probably going to do some type of external rotation motion. And I need to strengthen the anterior tibialis. So I'm going to do some type of dorsiflexion in the ankle motion. So probably a step up to balance. And if I get those 3 exercises in, I've covered my bases, So now I can just build myself a circuit as long as those 3 things are existing. So let's pick a chest exercise. Let's pick a back exercise, a shoulder exercise, biceps, triceps, and a leg exercise at the very end there. So for our chest, I take a look at that list. Doesn't really have anything to do with any of that. Cool, piece of cake. That means I can pick whatever chest exercise I want. Push-ups it is, right? For my upper back, I know that I need a rowing motion because I'm working on the rhomboids and I'm working on the middle/lower trap. So we'll do a seated row. For the shoulders, I need to focus on some external rotation action. So I might do like a wall angels. It's a really, really good one. For my biceps, I'm gonna, these are all fine, but I can get a little bit of anterior tibialis action if I do a single leg bicep curl. That gives me the opportunity to pull my toe up while I'm balancing on one leg. For my triceps, let's do a ball skull crusher. And for the legs, let's go with something, just some classic rack squats. I love a rack squat. It's basically like a goblet squat that's one side loaded. So it looks like this. Not squat, rack squat exercise. Not squat rack. That's not what I Googled. What? Let's put this in. Are you kidding me? Okay, internet, you're being real dumb right now. Kettlebell rack squat. Try that. Aha, take that, internet. So love a good rack squat. Now, this is a 2-sided rack squat, which is fine, but I think that actually kind of defeats the purpose. If you're going to do that, you might as well do a front squat. This, however, loading one side makes it very much a stabilization exercise now, because suddenly they're loaded on one side. So their body wants to tip So you have to focus on keeping them nice and straight. Love a rec squat, one of my favorites. So now I've got a very stabilization-based routine, and so this is going to be a good sort of circuit for me to focus on. I'll probably end up doing, 3 sets, 2 to 3 sets of 12 to 15 repetitions, right? And that's going to put me right into our stabilization rules, which I know my new folks, I know you guys haven't seen those rules yet, but that's what I'm going to focus on for a beginner client. That 12 to 15 repetitions, the reps are high enough so that ensures that I have to lift at a low intensity, which is going to be very safe for a brand new client. So how long did that take me? What, 5 minutes at the very most? And I'm explaining the whole thing, like, teaching the whole thing. So that's really not even like how long it's going to take. I'm going to blast this out with the client pretty quickly so I can take them right up to the gym floor. So I just built them their workout, right? I'll put it on scratch paper at first. And I do that on purpose because I don't want to give them a nice, clean printed version right out the gate. They might not sign up for training. They might have no reason to come back and train with me. So I want to make sure they get something valuable from me, but I also want to make sure that like they are going to stick around to actually train with me. I'm not doing that out of selfishness, by the way. I just know that they're going to get a much better experience if they actually train with me. So, there is a certain aspect of like when you are looking at this like sales process of like training, I know that you can definitely be self-motivated and do things that are going to simply bring the client back to you. That's a lot of times like what sales technique actually is. But, the other thing is like, if you truly believe that your sessions are worth it, and I absolutely do, then you want to make sure that you are getting this person to actually train with you, as long as the value outweighs the cost, right? So NASM is going to organize, we follow this OPT template, right? We follow the OPT model. And so I designed a stabilization workout here. The only exercise that I would say is not stabilization based is probably the seated row. But stabilization, I find that for beginner clients, stabilization exercises for the upper back are kind of tricky. So I actually really like that one personally. And so we are going to warm, and I didn't put a warm up in there, and I don't have any core stuff in there. So that's actually probably what I'll get into eventually. But that's how I like to lay things out for my first session. I like to focus on the biggest muscles, and then I teach core and balance stuff later. Does that make sense to everybody? Does everybody sort of see how we sort of like laid this out really quickly? This is my approach, by the way. We're going to get into the NASM approach after this. Daryl?
Yep.
Yeah, cool. Any questions on this, guys? From anybody? Doesn't seem like it. Okay. So slightly different take. Let's take a look at NASM and see how they're going to have us run this. Me personally, like I said, I like to focus on this because it gives a really big calorie burn in the first session. And this is something that I can get through very, very, very quickly. So lots of calories burned the very first time. Also, it's a little bit more impressive to build the whole thing right out the gate. And so when you do that, your clients, they're more likely to be impressed. And again, I like that as a sales tool. But let's take a look at how NASM would do this. Whoop, there we go. Question. I'll get on my, yeah, love that. Love that. So here's your OPT template. Now you can lay it out on this, by the way, which I often will. When I say that I do it on scratch paper, I mean that that just means I draw it by hand. In reality, when I build my workouts for my clients, it looks something kind of like this. I build it on the computer, actually. I'll build it on the computer, and then what I'll do is you'll notice I put hyperlinks to all the exercises so that my clients can keep the template on their phone. Actually, here is like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday phase 1 workout. So I got a little cardiovascular warm up here, which I did as like dynamic stretches. And then here's our core stuff, right? And so you click this little link right here, and it takes you to a video on how to do the exercise. So I really like doing that. You actually don't have to do this if you don't want to like, do these versions of things. Like you don't want to just have to, click like links to videos and all that. NASM does have its own app that you can build, and then your clients like sign up for it, and then they can see their workouts in the app and stuff. So that's another option, but I don't have a ton of experience with that app. I kind of do things manually myself. But yeah. So warm-up session. So generally, you're going to want to start with some flexibility training before you get into your cardiovascular warm-up. At least that's NASM's approach, right? So the initial session, right, and we'll go ahead and lay this out here. Where's my blank OPT template? Zooming out. So this is initial training session, right? So we got our sort of thing. So we're going to lay out our warm up here. We definitely want to make sure our client is nice and warm. We never want to exercise anybody before, we ensure that like they are mobile and able to move properly. That's what flexibility training is for, right? It's to ensure that you can move through safe ranges of motion. So before you do a cardiovascular warm up, it's a really good place for you to, get a little bit of stretching in, right? So in the first initial sessions, your clients are probably going to struggle to stabilize their heart rate. So that's one of the reasons why you probably, a lot of times when clients will, you can say, okay, we're going to go do a little bit of a cardiovascular warm up here. A lot of times their heart rate will go up and down, and they'll have a really hard time figuring it out. So what I like to do is start very gentle and work it up and ask them, is this a pace that you could keep up for a mile? Is this a pace that you can keep up for 20 minutes? Is this a pace you can keep up for, if I'm aiming for, a warm up, then it should be a pace that they can keep up for 20 minutes. If it is more intense, then yeah, I can make it more intense. And I would say, hey, I want this to be a pace that you can only keep up for a minute. If you can go 2 minutes, it's too easy. Or I'll say like, hey, I want this to be a pace that you can only keep up for like 30 seconds. If you can do a full minute, it's too easy, right? But if you can only do 15 seconds, it's too hard. So I like to explain things in terms like that to my clients to kind of teach them. But like I said, you're going to start with a little bit of flexibility and a little bit of cardio here. So this is where NASM is going to have you do flexibility first. So during the flexibility training, you are going to want to focus on those muscles that we just figured out in the overhead squat. Again, lats, pecs, and calves for this particular client, but it would obviously be different depending on who it is. So we are focusing on corrective flexibility techniques here, which means we are doing static stretches in our beginning sessions. Do I like active stretches? Absolutely, but only once my client knows how to do them. Do I like dynamic stretches? I love dynamic stretches. Not for an initial session. First session, focusing on static stretches. So we're doing some corrective flexibility here. Now, you can do SMR. Typically, NASM is always going to want to encourage you. Like your warm-up should normally, by default, look like this. SMR, stretching, cardio. Those are the three things in your warm-up typically, right? So SMR, stretches, cardio, normally. But in an initial session, you're probably going to skip the SMR. Now, I know that seems a little weird, but the reason we do that is because a lot of times, especially with obese individuals, they will have a very hard time holding themselves up on something like a foam roller. The wrists can get really, like pinched, and that's not very good. So it's a lot easier to sort of just go straight to the stretching and introduce foam rolling as a concept later, especially if you are more prepared by bringing in like a tiger tail or some other piece of equipment. So foam rolling is maybe not the best SMR option. Maybe instead you go with like a massage gun or a tiger tail or like a lacrosse ball that they can push into a wall or something like that. So a lot of times you're probably going to postpone that once you get into the actual versions of your workouts, but not in the initial sort of test, first session. So as we're looking at this, let's say, we're using this example client, so lats, pecs, and calves. So we're just going to go and build this static ball lat stretch, static pectoral wall stretch, and static wall calf stretch. Then we'll throw them onto and this is one thing that's like a preference. Now, if your client has the goal, like we go back to our client's goals, let's say they were also like, I want to run a marathon in a year, right? Okay, if that's the case, then I'm probably going to focus on like running as my warm-up technique. But a lot of times you can just simply ask your client what type of cardio most appeals to them. If they're like, I like the elliptical or I like the rowing machine, those are the things that you can focus on, right? So we're going to sort of like just write down whatever machine they think is going to be best for them. So let's go with the elliptical today, right? So we're going to do one set of everything. Duration is 30 seconds for our static stretches, right? The ball lat stretch is a two-sided exercise, so we're going to say 30 seconds each. And that's actually true for all of these stretches here. So 30, 30, 30. And then we'll throw them on the elliptical for 5 minutes. Now, what are you going to do for 5 minutes? If you're standing around doing nothing, right, that's not very valuable. I don't want to see anybody sitting there being like, all right, cool, we got 5 minutes here. Right, that's not what we're doing. No way. You want to sit there and you want to explain and manage your expectations. So what I like to do, you know, remember, we're laying this whole workout out. I like to go through what the rest of their workout is actually going to look like. I find that to be an extremely well use of time there, right? So next section we're going to move into, we're going to do a little bit of core training, right? Next session, that's not what I meant. Next section. Next section we're going to move into is a little bit of core training. So we are going to focus on, again, stabilization routines here. So we're going to focus on core stabilization exercises, right? Now, when I say core stabilization, a lot of you guys know what I mean by that. I mean any core exercise that falls under the stabilization level list, which are going to be core exercises that do not move the spine. So I open up my stabilization checklist here, and I got all of these exercises to choose from. I got more on the internet, you know, but I'm going to pick something that my client can definitely adhere to. Now, if I've got an extremely obese individual, right? I've got a very overweight individual. I am probably not going to pick a core exercise that lays them down on the ground. That is going to be a very difficult process to get down and get back up and get down and get back up. It can be really hard on the joints, really hard on the knees. I don't like that. So I'm probably going to pick some type of core exercise that keeps them, you know, in an elevated position, maybe like a modified plank on a bench, something that they can step out of very, very easily. Or if they're not, you know, if they are able to get to the ground, then great, right? Our client here, they only want to lose 20 pounds, right? Is that what I said? 10 pounds. They only want to lose 10 pounds. So that's not super substantial. So chances are they're within a relatively like normal body weight. And so if that's the case, then, you know, I can pick something that does take them to the floor. So I might go with, you guys know my favorite core exercise. We're going to go with the Mcgill Sit Up. Now, the Mcgill Sit Up sounds like I'm doing crunches, sounds like I'm doing a sit up. I'm not. Mcgill Sit Up is actually where I barely move at all and just crunch 1 inch up off the ground.
We're always looking for
Man, Ryan Reynolds is just all over my feed lately. I don't know what's up. But it's this exercise right here, right? So he's just going to very gently bring the shoulders barely up, not moving the spine. The spine is learning how to stabilize here, right? That's the entire crunch. We could all, you know, so love the Mcgill Sit Up, probably my all-time favorite core exercise, right? Like I said, floor exercises need to be avoided if it's an extremely obese individual. Now, balance training is normally what we'd move into next, right? This is the movement prep section, core balance and reactive stuff. I'm probably going to go ahead and skip this in the first session. Balance training is great, but it is also, well, a little frustrating. Doesn't exactly leave the best first impression. So I'm just going to focus on this one core exercise for right now. And while I am a huge proponent of balance training, I'm going to probably incorporate this into session number 2 or 3. Now, in the normal workout A that I'm building, this total body circuit, I would absolutely have balance in here. But again, this is a first session, and I already went through all the stuff at the desk before getting here. So I also don't have all the time in the world to get through everything, right? So I'm just going to focus on a little bit of core stuff. And then in terms of plyometric and reactive training, I'm probably not going to incorporate this either into a first session, because these are pretty advanced techniques that are very explosive. Now, again, this client only wants to lose 10 pounds. So could they handle jump training? Yeah, probably, but I need to make sure that my client has proper flexibility. I need to make sure they can move through full ranges of motion. I need to make sure they have proper core stability, which I'm, going to be able to observe through our first couple sessions. And I need to make sure they have proper neuromuscular efficiency. It's a fancy way of saying balance. And because I skipped balance, it's probably not safe for me to do reactive training either. So instead, my movement prep, you'll notice, is one single core exercise here. I will probably incorporate one more. So I'll go with something like a bird dog. We're going to do 2 core exercises, no balance, no reactive, in the first initial session. Again, this is not what their end workout's going to look like, but this is something I can get through relatively quickly in a first session to sort of show them the ropes, right? So let's go with like 2 sets. I don't have all day to do a million sets in this initial session. Again, we burned a lot in the first bit. For reps, Mcgill Sit Up's a little weird to count reps, and so is the bird dog, because they are very slow, long duration exercises. So normally you want to do anywhere from 12 to 20 reps. I'm actually going to do only 5, but my tempo is going to be extremely slow. In fact, I'm going to say isometric. We'll take 0 seconds of rest after the Mcgill Sit Up, and we'll do 30 seconds of rest after the bird dog. So we'll do these as like a pair. And just to make sure that I'm being really clear about my reps here, I'm going to say a 5-second hold each rep. 6-second hold each rep. So 6 times 5, that's 30 seconds, which is right in the wheelhouse for stabilization. I'll put that down here as well. So there we go. There's my core work for my initial session. Like I said, I'm skipping balance, even though it's very valuable, and I'm skipping reactive, even though it is also very valuable. What about SAQ? What about, can I throw them on a speed ladder? Absolutely. SAQ training, speed ladder training, cone drills, jogging, all of those things are really fresh. They're really engaging. But again, they kind of follow the same rules that we see in the reactive side of things. We need to make sure they have proper flexibility. We need to make sure they have proper core stabilization. We need to make sure they have proper balance before we ever do any of this stuff. So I'm probably not going to cover it in my first 3 sessions. I need to observe my client for a couple sessions to make sure that they are capable of doing that, right? So then I get into my resistance training, right? My resistance training, this is an option. This is typically where I'm going to teach my client anywhere from 2 to 5 resistance training exercises within this session here. I'm probably going to focus on total body exercises. Why? This is the weight loss class, right? So if my client's focused on weight loss, I probably want to burn as many calories as possible, right? And if I can burn as many calories as possible, I'm prioritizing their weight loss. If my client said they wanted to put on 10 pounds of muscle, I probably wouldn't do total body exercise. I'd probably do, compound exercises, but I'd probably solo out specific body parts. So again, this is based on my client's goals, right? We're taking all those considerations. You'll notice I did this as like a circuit, right? Why? It's a short little circuit of only 2 exercises, but that circuit is going to ensure that, my client gets a little bit of extra calorie burn. Bodybuilder client, maybe it would look something like this instead, or power lifter, So again, I'm building this with the intention of ensuring that my client is focused on caloric expenditure. So for total body exercise, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to pick 3 exercises today because that's kind of in the middle. And so let's go with a total body. Let's go with a step up to balance. Actually, you know what? Well, let's go with a squat, curl to press, right? So they're going to have 2 dumbbells in hand. They're going to do a body weight squat, or they're going to do a dumbbell squat into a bicep curl into a shoulder press, right? And that's going to ensure that we're really getting a little bit of, total body work in there, a little bit of biceps, a little bit of shoulders as well. Then I can get a little bit of a chest exercise here. Let's go with like a stability ball chest press. That's your classic unstable chest exercise. And then we'll go with like a kneeling cable row, and that's an unstable upper back exercise. By the way, all of these exercises are on the stabilization chest list, right? There's my total body, squat, curl to press. There's my dumbbell chest press. And then the kneeling row the kneeling row actually isn't in there. So you know what, just to be fair, I mean, that it would definitely be stabilization. But let's go with like kettlebell renegade row. So again, I am going to I'm trying not to overwhelm my client, right? So I'm probably going to do two sets again. And we want to do somewhere between 12 and 20 repetitions here. So let's just fire it up. Let's go 20 reps, that is going to really make it burn like crazy. We'll go 10 each on that. Actually, no, not like that. We gotta go 20 each because it is a single set exercise. That is brutal. This is gonna be friggin' tough. We're going slow tempo here on all of these, and then we're gonna do this as a circuit. 0 seconds of rest, 0 seconds of rest. We'll give them 60 seconds right there. And there we go. Once I've sort of like taught that to my client, I'm going to go ahead and cool them down. And I am literally just going to go ahead and copy and paste this, but I'm going to do it in reverse. So we'll go throw them on the elliptical first, easing out of this high intensity stuff, followed by the stretches that I did earlier. And that workout there should take about 30 minutes. So if I can get through all of my fitness assessment stuff, get through all of that, and like I said, you can also do a little bit of integrated cardio. Sorry, forgot about the cardio. You can do a little bit of integrated cardio as well. So integrating your cardio and your strength training together, that's one of the reasons we like circuit training so much, is because it does become like cardio. I mean, seriously, by the end of 20 each renegade rows, they are going to be breathing like crazy. The other thing that we can do, and one of the things that I really love doing, that I totally forgot that I was going to do here, is actually at the very end of this, I might integrate a little bit of cardio as rest in between here. So I might say 0 seconds of rest there. And then I throw them on, let's say like the rowing machine, right? I introduce a second cardio type, 2 reps or 2 sets. And then under the reps, I'm just going to put 2 minutes at a moderate tempo, 0 seconds of rest. So what that does is it's like strength training exercise, strength training exercise, strength training exercise, 2 minutes of cardio. So they're learning a new cardio machine. And then the amount of time that it takes them to walk back, their body is recovering. All the strength stuff is recovering while they're on that rowing machine. Is it recovering like fully? No. I mean, they're using other muscles. So their body is like, spending resources to focus on getting through the exercise. But the repetitions are so high and the intensity is so low that, it's not about building strength. This is a horrible recipe for strength building, but it's a terrific recipe for a high calorie burn session. So by incorporating a little bit of like intermittent cardio, that's a really good way to not only introduce different cardio machines and teach your client different things over the first couple sessions, but it's also a way to maximize that calorie burn. This is one of my favorite styles of fat loss routine. In fact, my favorite fat loss routine, my actual workouts, because remember, this is just an initial session workout, looks just like this, except that I love doing like a superset with like cardio afterwards. So exercise A, exercise B, cardio, A, B, cardio. That is probably my favorite fat loss routine. And I love to follow like the Arnold Schwarzenegger approach of like agonist antagonist work, or I like to follow upper body plus legs into cardio. I think that also works really well. Is it a good way to build muscle? No, not really. But it's a great way to torch fat. So love a good workout like that. You know, and it keeps you working. It also, I will say, that more than any other style of workout that you'll build, it will make you feel like your sessions are flying by. So that would look like this if I were actually building it. I'll come back to this, but it would be let's say we'll do the upper lower version. So we'll go like Bosu ball, squat. I'm gonna literally do just like my old go-to that worked really well. Stability, ball, chest press, cardio machine. I'm just gonna leave it anonymous. And then let's go with like a dumbbell deadlift into dumbbell bent over row, cardio machine. And then step up to balance plus dumbbell shoulder press into a cardio machine. Boom. There we go. That is a classic fat loss routine right there. So again, 2 to 3 sets, 15 to 20 reps into 2 minutes of cardio. And we would just kind of copy and paste that. There's a little bonus routine for you guys. Take a screenshot of that if you want it. But this actually would be like a 60-minute workout. Probably not something I would do in an initial session unless I have like a full 90 minutes. You know, sometimes that'll happen, by the way. Like your client will they'll just like sign up for training. And if they're just like signed up and there's like, yeah, I'm ready to go. And it's like, you don't want your free assessment? It's like, nope. It's like, all right, well, I'm going to give you a free assessment. Show up a half hour earlier than our normal appointment time. You knock out that extra assessment. You give them like a little 90-minute session and then just put them in, you know, you go straight in and you burn your first session right afterwards. That actually happens a lot. If you work in a place like LA Fitness, for instance, where like the training manager will do the sales. If somebody's doing your sales for you, that's probably how you'll end up running those sessions. But there's a really good fat loss routine. Oh, I forgot to put the rest in here. Sorry, hold on. I like a medium tempo just throughout this sort of thing. And then we don't take any actual rest. The rest is, you know, while you're walking from the cardio machine back to your thing. There you go. That's my favorite fat loss routine. And you can swap any of these exercises out. Doesn't matter what exercises you guys decide to go with. It also doesn't matter what cardio machine you go with. I used to love doing cardio samplers. I would be like, all right, rowing machine for set number 1, elliptical for set number 2, Stairmaster for set number 3. So let's go back. Let me delete all that. So we can see the NASM approach. Again, I'm kind of going off books today. I want to give you guys the NASM approach, but I also want to give you like my take on things. So there we go. This should take about 30 minutes. So you have that 60-minute session and you get through the first one and there you go. So now let's say that let's see how this is all laid out, right? So your client shows up for their first session, you greet them at the door, introduce yourself, right? Take them over and do your subjective information. You put them through the PAR-Q, make sure that you keep them safe. Do the lifestyle assessment, you know, that's the general/medical history questionnaire. And then you explain and review some of their goals. Ask them what's very important to them. What is it that they want to work out? I like to come up with 2 to 3 SMART goals before we head down to the floor. And that's going to help me draw a correlation. You're like, you want to do this, so that's why I picked this. You want to do this, that's why I picked this, right? And then you can do some of those objective measurements, right? You can get their circumference measurements. You can throw them on the body fat tester, body composition stuff. Now you'll notice that NASM has skipped all the cardio assessments. Why? Cardio assessments take a while, especially with weight loss clients, because it's probably not going to be the YMCA step test. It's probably going to be the Rockport walk test, which takes about 15 minutes. So that is a very, very long assessment, which is why it is skipped here. So we get their heart rate, resting heart rate, that is, body weight, measurements, body composition. You can calculate out BMI if you want, and you do the overhead squat, and that's it. So then we do our first workout. We introduce the concept of a warm-up routine, right? We introduce the idea of like how to warm up, like with their stretches and stuff. We introduce a little bit of flexibility training, a little bit of core training. We don't do balance, we don't do reactive, we don't do SAQ. And we do a little bit of resistance training, and then we do a cool down. And then the most important thing, schedule your next appointment. Put it on the books, right? And that way you've got a date that they're going to show up for their next one. That actually should probably fall under their little goals here, right? So then you've got to have a plan of action for your second session. So we didn't do cardio assessments last time. Guess what? We're probably going to do them this time. So this was their first session. Let's go ahead and put a second page down here. Here's their second session, right? So I'm going to go ahead and delete all this. And we're going to talk about what to do for the second session here. So in the second session, you're going to sort of review any of their questions from last time. So you do start at the desk again, take them on over and be like, all right, how has the food been this week? You know, let's say they signed up for training this time. You've got to, so now this is your first 1 hour session with the client, right? Ask them how the food tracking go, how's the food journaling, what are you know, did they work on their portions at all? How have you found, like, it maybe last time if you did do a little bit of like, you know, nutritional information, now you can get a little bit more specific about it. You can start talking about acceptable macronutrient distribution ranges. Like, here's how much protein you want to get, here's how many carbohydrates, here's how much fat. Talk about like how to break down a food label. I used to love bringing in, actually, I didn't bring it in, but I used to leave a like a can of soup at the gym, and I would just go over and grab it and then like walk them through all the stuff that was on there, teach them how to read a food label. And then maybe talk about the idea of like meal planning, right? Talk about the idea of like meal prep, right? I would love to do, you know, I would sort of lay that out for the day. This is where like I'd basically pull another piece of scratch paper and I'd pull another piece of scratch paper out and I would basically build them like in an example meal plan. I'd say, okay, well, you know, maybe for breakfast, you know, you do like a 300 to 500 calorie smoothie. You know, for a snack, you do 150 to 200 calorie fruit plus nuts, right? For lunch, you do maybe a 500 calorie, and you make sure that you get like a starchy carb plus a protein, veggies of some type, and then you get another snack, you know, or a snack slash protein shake. I think that can work actually really well. You know, and that's going to be 150 to 200 calories. And then you do dinner, which could be 500 calories. And it's going to be a starch plus a protein plus veggies, right? And if you take a look at that, you know, that's 500, 1,000, 1,500, plus 200 plus 200, that's about 1,900 calories right there. So pretty easy to stick to. So I'll often lay that out with my clients, you know, and then I can give them specific examples of like what a 150 to 200 calorie snack would look like. You know, if you look at like an apple, you know, an apple is going to have about 95 calories in it. Take a look at a cheese stick here, got about 80 calories in it. Oop, maybe it's like mozzarella. This one's 130. That's a heavy cheese cat stick, but Yeah, got about 80 calories. So 90 plus 80, there you go. There's your 150 to 200 calorie snack. Keeps you feeling full, keeps you confident, moving throughout the rest of your day. So then we review their goals, see how well they got through it. We then, because we're already at the desk, book their next appointment. So get them ready for session number 3. And then we take them into our second workout, which we will have written before they actually showed up. So again, this time they're going to do some flexibility training. So I might teach them some different stretches this time. So instead of doing a ball lat stretch, I might do like a foam roller lat stretch. It's a really good lat stretch as well. Instead of doing a pectoral wall stretch, maybe I will do a foam roller pec stretch. That's the one where you lay the arm out at the side like that. And then from there, instead of a wall calf stretch, we can do a kneeling soleus stretch. That is like my all-time favorite calf stretch. Some of you guys will recognize this one as that like knee past the toe stretch that I love so much. Right there. Further you can bring your knee past your toe, the better, basically. And that's going to get right into that soleus. Or I might address like completely different muscles. Usually the list will honestly be longer than just three muscles. And then last time they did the elliptical, so this time let's throw them on the Stairmaster, right? And again, I'm going to do one set of everything, 30 seconds each. And then 5 minutes, right? From there, we're going to move into a little bit of balance training. This is where we're actually going to skip core training and we're going to throw some balance exercises in there. So if I look at my balance exercise checklist here, maybe I go with like a single leg lift and chop, which you guys all know is my all-time favorite. So we'll go with a single leg lift and chop. Then I give them another balance exercise where I'm not moving the balance leg. Remember, this is a stabilization routine, right? So maybe I go with like a single leg hip rotation. That'd be a really good one. Right? So the single leg lift and chop, that's this one right here. Right? They're balancing on one leg, waking up the foot, right? Lifting that to the other side. We also got the single leg hip rotation. Might look like this. So they're standing on one leg. Oh, gosh darn it. Go away, ads. So they're standing on one leg, and then they rotate out. Really good one, right? So now I've got my 2 balance exercises there. So we're going to do anywhere from 12 to 20 reps. So that's 6 to 10 each. So we'll do 2 sets there, just like we did last time. Let's go with what did I do last time? To the high end. So 10 each. Tempo is slow because it's the stabilization phase. 0 seconds of rest, right? I don't need to take rest, or maybe I do 30 seconds at the end. So ideally, this should take just about as long as my core stuff last time. Same thing on my stretches. So my warm-up is about the same length of time. My core balance reactive is about the same length of time. And then can I introduce some SAQ training? I could, but again, I would need to make sure they have adequate balance, which I'm just seeing their balance for the first time today. So probably not in this initial session. That's where I'm going to get into some resistance training. Now, with the resistance training, this is a good opportunity for you to get into those other muscle groups that we didn't address last time. So what did we address last time? We did a little bit of total body and chest and upper back. So I need a little bit of shoulders and I need a little bit of arm action here. So I'll go ahead and start with another total body exercise, right? Let's go with a reverse lunge curl to press, right? So that'd be, actually, you know what? Let's go with a reverse lunge. No, actually, I really like that. So now I'm getting a little bit of, more of that going. And then I can get a little bit of like shoulder action and maybe some triceps in there. I've got like a little bit of like a bicep curl in here, right? So maybe I go with like a single leg scaption, probably my favorite shoulder exercise. And then a little bit of tricep action, stability, fall, triceps extension, right? So I got a little bit of, total body, a little bit of shoulders, and a little bit of triceps. And over here, I got a little bit of total body, a little bit of chest, and a little bit of upper back. So now I've hit, go back to my sort of example over here, because I have a list here. Chest, back, shoulders, biceps, triceps, and legs. And then I didn't even put total body in my version, but there we go, right? And then we got to throw them on a little bit of cardio again. We've done the Stairmaster. We've done the elliptical. We've done the rowing machine. So let's go with treadmill, right? And again, I'm going to follow the same rep scheme here. 2 sets. Let's say 20 repetitions here. So that's going to be 10 each on that. 10 each on that as well. 20 there. And in 2 minutes, say moderate tempo, slow tempo. Yeah. Slow tempo. And 0 seconds of rest each. So that way they're kind of getting through all of this. So I took a little bit of time to sort of review stuff with them, right? Now, if I've got a little bit of extra time during this session, because maybe it doesn't time out quite the same as it did last time, I can always spend a little bit more time on that cardio and coach them through like their goals while I'm sitting there talking to them, right? And we've already got the 3rd session scheduled, right? So by the 3rd session, they're going to know how to warm up. They're going to know how to cool down. They can get through that stuff on their own. They're going to hopefully know how to kind of move their way through those stretches that we've introduced them to. So by the 3rd session, you can jump straight into the sort of strength training portion, right? So now, 3rd session, warm up. This can be performed on their own. I don't like to do that, by the way. I like I do. In fact, I do it probably more often than I don't. I often have my clients do their own flexibility, but I will say I don't do it early on. I usually make sure that my clients worked with me for at least like a couple weeks before I really like get them to warm up on their own. Otherwise, they don't see the importance of stretching. They don't see the importance of warming up, and then they end up just like skipping it or, showing up just for the strength training portion. But now I'm going to put everything together. Okay. I'm going to put everything together in like one big old training session. So here's our 3rd session here. That was the 2nd training session. Let's take a look at the 3rd one. So now, 3rd session, I'm going to put it all together, right? I'm going to go ahead and leave the stretches alone. I'll go ahead and keep the Stairmaster on here. Maybe that was the one that they liked the most. Probably ask them, I'd probably say like, hey, Eric, what was your favorite? And he's like, I like the Stairmaster and I like the rowing machine. Cool. Those are the 2 we're going to keep. So we put them on that to kind of get them nice and warm. And now we'll go ahead and put our core and our balance stuff together. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to copy my core stuff. I'm going to move it down here. Right? And copy my balance stuff. Move it down here. But I do have to play with like my rest periods here. So now I'm going to keep it at 2 sets. But I'm probably going to lose that 30 seconds of rest in between. So that way they go through this whole big long circuit there, right? That is going to amp the calories up right in the beginning. And then I'm going to go up here. I'm going to copy this total body bit from the beginning. And I'm going to apply that down here. Leave myself a little bit of space so I can actually copy this again. And then put that over here. And there we go. Right now, I've got a 60-minute training session, right? That they can go through. And honestly, if it's a real true beginner client, I can just do this. I can just do exactly this routine every session 3 days a week. This is going to burn a substantial amount of calories. I do think it'll get a little stale towards the end. I think it might get a little boring, doing the same thing 12 times in a month. So instead, that's why you can see like my approach to things. I like doing like an A and a B. But I could just as easily make a second resistance section, right? Let's say that this becomes third training session. We make this workout A. I'll just go ahead and delete that third session stuff. We're going to say this is workout A, right? And then I just copy this whole thing and I just change these exercises. Instead of a squat, curl to press, let's do a dumbbell deadlift to bent over row. There's a total body exercise, right? Instead of a reverse lunge to press, let's do a step up to lateral raise, right? Instead of a stability ball chest press, let's do a stability ball. I love the incline chest press. That's not a ton of variety, but I just love that pair together in one workout so much. You know, instead of a kettlebell renegade row, let's go with a kneeling lat pull down. Leave the cardio alone, you know. Instead of a single leg scaption, let's go with a single leg dumbbell shoulder press. And instead of a stability ball triceps extension, let's change that to military push-ups. And now I've got two workouts, right? They can switch back and forth between those two. It is going to maximize their caloric expenditure, right? It's not the circuit training approach that I took here, you know, but this is also a way. So maybe this becomes next month's workout. You know, I get into a, 3 sets of just this big long circuit, 3 days per week. That's gonna be 9 sets per body part. Do 4 sets, then it's suddenly 12 sets per body part. That's great. That's a great training volume right there. So I'm gonna delete all this. Not all of it. But there is how I can sort of run my third training session. They already are familiar with the exercises, and so I put it together. So this was a 30-minute session, this is a 30-minute session, and then I put it all together in that one. And they just do the same workout 30 days. For a true beginner, it's probably a really good choice. You're not going to overwhelm them by teaching them too many exercises too early on. You know, and they're probably not actually going to be bored. If they're training with you and pushing really hard every time, it's honestly going to work pretty darn well, you know. But next month, then you're like, all right, so get this, what we're going to do is we're going to alternate back and forth. And they're like, oh, that sounds really complicated. And you can keep them in the stabilization phase. Remember how I told you guys, you don't have to move out of a different phase every single time. Right? You can change it up every 4 to 8 weeks. We can keep our client in stabilization next month. But if we give them a workout A and a workout B, that's going to give them enough variety to keep their body from plateauing. Heck, I could keep them in stabilization for a 3rd month in a row if I wanted to. And I could have a workout A on Monday, B on Tuesday, B on Wednesday, C on Friday. That's enough variety. And then by that point, I probably want to get into hypertrophy or max strength or strength endurance, something, you know, some other phase of training at that point. And that's going to completely change up the rep scheme, you know. So that is how we sort of like build these workouts here. I know that you might not be super familiar with all these exercises just yet. You know, I didn't give you demos on all of these, but you're going to get a chance to kind of experience those the longer we are going through stuff. But any questions on how to sort of set up those first 3 sessions, guys? How'd that all feel? Questions, comments, concerns? Nothing? Well, I'll tell you one thing. I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to attach this in tonight's email. And that way you guys can have a copy of this. For anybody who wants to use it, you can. I will say, I would probably do more sets than this overall. You know, I mean, if you did this 3 days per week, that's, you know, you're getting 12 sets per body. It's not bad. Actually, you're not getting full 12 sets. I would probably do 3 sets of everything. I'd probably, you know, by the 2nd week. Probably how I'd say it. But I'll attach this in tonight's email. Yeah, and then you guys can kind of use this actually. Really good for torching fat. You know, really, really, really good routine for maximizing caloric expenditure. And it doesn't even have any plyometrics in it. We'll get into that later, you know. And then SAQ, didn't even get into that. We can get into that later. All right, so let's say now you're in the swing of things, you're working with your client. What are some of the challenges that we can face with really anybody, but we'll look at weight loss clients in particular. What's this say? I wouldn't say don't do cardio, but I would limit the cardio to more high intensity, short duration cardio. If you're trying to gain mass, it's really important to keep your heart strong. So it's important to have some form of cardio, but I would probably keep it to maybe 2 20-minute sessions of HIIT training per week. So what I would say is like do 1 minute on, 1 minute off, get your heart rate really, really high, and then recover 1 1 1 1 and do 10 sets of that. So that's going to be 20 minutes all together, and then do 2 sessions of that per week. That's enough for like somebody who's trying to gain mass. Daryl, do you have a question? I saw you on mute for a second. Was that just a finger bump? Yeah, no sweat, no sweat. Oh, all right. So yeah, so challenges. What are some of the challenges that we face? Missed sessions. It's a big one. Client didn't show up. Look, life is going to get in the way. It's going to happen, right? Encourage your client to call and text as soon as they know that they are not going to be able to make it, so that you can reschedule. Now, guys, harden your hearts. If they do not give you 24 hours notice, you should charge them for the session. 2 reasons for that. 1, you have bills to pay. Probably the most important. You can't help anybody if you're, not able to keep working. And number 2, you're really not helping them by just letting them cancel all the time. It's important to hold your clients accountable. Yes, we are creating a nurturing environment, but it is also vitally important that we are encouraging them to be the best versions of themselves. And the best version of themselves doesn't miss their sessions, So there has to be some form of consequence. Not that we're there to punish our clients. It's not our goal, but it is really important to make sure that you are keeping them accountable. So remind them of the missed appointment policies, 24 hours notice or they get charged. I will say you should also call and text them immediately the minute they don't show up for their session on time, right? If they don't show up within the first 15 minutes, try to reach out and make sure everything's all right, Late arrivals, you can try to make up for lost time by maybe giving them a little bit of, you can try to make it for lost time by doing a little bit of extra cardio into your session. So a lot of times, like if I've got a client who shows up late, I will often not do the workout that I have scheduled for them. And I used to have these backup workouts that I just kind of kept on my phone, and they were I did this on purpose. They were brutal. So I would purposefully make them extremely, extremely hard. And that way, nobody wanted to show up late for my sessions. So you can try to make up for it with like lots of cardio. So I would just make these super intense, like cardio-based workouts. What if your client isn't sticking to the program nutrition-wise, right? Well, ask them why they think they're struggling, right? A lot of times people are underreporting the calories they're consuming. People don't understand portions. Portions are hard to understand. So a lot of times people are consuming 30 to 40% more calories than they think they are. Again, it's one of the reasons why people plateau. It's not so much that they are, lazy. They're just not sticking to the program because even though they think they're sticking to the program, right? So figure out what it is that's causing them to struggle. Do they have a lack of support at home? Do they have like a spouse that's like, no, let's go out to eat all the time, right? Do they have a hard time like preparing food ahead of time? Do they not know how to shop? figure out what it is. Ask questions about this. You're going to have plenty of time to talk during your training sessions. People are going to be sharing stuff with you all the time. Man, people are going to be sharing stuff with you all the time. Sometimes the things that people will share with you is astounding to me. But, you know, you want to figure out, you know, get to the root cause of the problem, right? You know, they have a hard time like controlling their hunger. You know, don't keep that junk food in the house. Figure out what, you know, what the root cause here is. Not every solution is going to work, but, you know, you can try things out. You know, there's a working relationship. What about relapse? If your client has some version of like a lapse or a temporary misstep, our goal is to make sure that it doesn't become like a full-on actual relapse. Remember, missteps are going to happen. It doesn't mean that, like, you know, they just give up and you know, quit their routine. And it's like, no, you know, we are going to see, okay, we struggled, we made a mistake. How do we get back on course, right? First thing, accept that it happened. It's fine, but move on. Don't dwell on it, right? You know, get your client back on track there. What if your client is too sore to work out today? This will happen sometimes, especially in the beginning sessions. You will wipe the floor with your client and they will be completely wiped out. And they'll show up and be like, I am here. I want to train, but I am so freaking sore today, I can barely move. If that's the case, you know, you can always focus on more core-based stuff or maybe some flexibility techniques, and encourage them to maybe do a little bit of light cardio, which will help work out some of that lactic acid, and still help them with their weight loss goals, because it does still burn a lot of calories. It's not going to help build the muscle for the day, but that's okay. You know, we can always come back to that later. What if they're really struggling with their hunger? You know, your client comes to you and they're like, look, I'm sticking to the routine, but my willpower is fading. This has been really tough and I'm having a hard time sticking to this. You know, yeah, let's take a look at their hunger. We can maybe adjust their calories if we need to. But figure out like what's causing that, right? Are they actually really thirsty? Is it that they're not getting enough water? Because that's very common. We know that oftentimes hunger is mistaken for thirst. Or I'm sorry, thirst is often mistaken for hunger. It could also be they're not getting very balanced meals. And so like they are getting like a massive amount of like a processed carbohydrate, which is leading to them feeling really hungry later on, right? If that's the case, then, you know, balancing out their meals, throwing in something that's going to lead to them feeling a little bit fuller is really helpful. You know, honestly, like you can add like a salad. Trader Joe's has, they have these like pre-made salads that are like, you know, like this one's like 160 calories, you know, and it's this one right here. Like that Southwestern salad has like nothing for calories in it, you know? And so like adding that adds bulk to their diet without adding like a lot of calories. So that can be a really good way to make them feel fuller a lot longer. You can also plan out your meals, take a look at like their schedule and see like if it's very dysfunctional. You can encourage them to carry snacks, which can be very helpful. And if they're having trouble, like one of the reasons why they're experiencing extreme hunger is maybe because of stress, you can look at like stress management techniques. We know that that's obviously very, very common. So review your client's food journal. This is one of the reasons why we love food journaling so much. And what if your client is like frustrated? They're just hitting a plateau, right? Again, is one of the reasons why we want to test various different things. Yeah, weight loss is going to plateau. Inches might plateau, but we recognize it and we notice it's like, look, I know you're frustrated with the weight loss, but your body fat percentage is going down. Or I know you're frustrated with your inches haven't budged a little bit, but we are seeing like you're increasing the weight and that you're lifting. You're getting stronger every day. You know, try to take the emphasis off of just weight And we really like this idea of like cluster testing. The more stuff you can test, the more information that you can track, the easier it is for us to show our clients where they are making progress. And if you notice that you have a client that gets very frustrated very easily, it's probably one of the reasons why you want to wait 3 to 4 weeks between each weigh-in, because then they're going to see larger results. It's one of the reasons why we don't like weighing every single day. If you are emotionally able to handle weighing yourself every day and you're not going to beat yourself up about it, great, I support you, but generally, I would say be cautious with that. What about eating out, right? Special events, they have a really hard time sort of controlling themselves around the holidays, or they have a lot of birthdays in the office or something like that, office parties, going out to lunch with business partners, things like that. If that's the case, try to find ways to have like a plan of action. And that's a really good way. Teach your client how to go to a website. If they know that they're going to Panera Bread for lunch, right? Get the menus online. Take a look at the menu, come up with a plan of action. They can bring that menu to you. You guys can both work together to actually choose what types of foods are going to sort of fit within their plan. There's room to eat out, guys. Like, it's okay to eat out, but we want to make sure that we are focusing on the healthier options, and that's going to require a plan of action. So first couple sessions obviously can be a little bit complicated, in how we lay it out. But we want to make sure that our clients are sort of adopting these, habits and getting used to these routines early on, which is where we want to introduce concepts slowly. So what we sort of did like a half workout with like a lot of desk time for our first 2 sessions. And then we hit our first full-on hard training session. Also, a lot of times this works really well on like a Monday schedule. We start gentle, Wednesday schedule, still kind of gentle, and then we kick their butt on Friday. They get the whole weekend to recover. So another really good approach that kind of helps them, which is why we sort of save it for the end of the week. So make sure that you're sequencing things. I'm not saying you have to do things this way. I'm not saying you have to do things this way either. This is like my approach. You're going to probably come up with your own techniques, your own approaches. There's not one, perfect answer for how to do this stuff. But the more familiar you get with it, the more you practice it, the more you honestly do this on your feet, training with clients and stuff, the more natural it's going to be. So I'm going to put the power, stabilization, and strength checklists in the email tonight. You're really only going to focus on the stabilization checklist in the beginning. And this is honestly the last PowerPoint that we have in this class. I need to actually activate today's lesson on Canvas. Tomorrow, we will have a lecture, but it will not be looking at, it won't be looking at a PowerPoint. We've got what I call the acute variables lecture, and it's where I'm going to take you guys through what I like to affectionately refer to as the big ass chart. And the big ass chart is basically all of the rules for that staircase, all of the rules for the OPT model. So if this will ever load, you will see it will have exactly how many sets and reps we're going to choose for our clients, what tempo, and things like that. And so we're going to work our way through the 5 phases tomorrow and talk about like how to actually plug in some numbers and how to choose the appropriate exercises. And once we know how to do that, then we'll be good to go. And that's about it, guys. Any questions today? How y'all feeling?
Feeling great. A lot of information.
Yeah, it was a big one today. Yeah.
But worth it though, but worth it.
For sure. Tomorrow is going to be a lot as well, but it'll be the end of the module. We'll get some time to recover, and we're resetting the system going into anatomy and physiology next week.
Oh yeah, can't wait.
Yeah, it's a good one. But yeah, let me go ahead and kill today's recording.